we're going to get into Tulsi Gabbard. She was on the Joe Rogan Experience. Joe Rogan, like his podcast, the largest podcast in the world. I think she had actually been on previously. I had not seen it. I've heard of her. Didn't totally know who she was. I did not pay attention. This is in the last election, so at least not too thoroughly. So I didn't totally know who she was. I heard the name on the Joe Rogan podcast and from other people before, but I didn't totally know who she was. So I was actually very intrigued to listen to the podcast. It was a good podcast. It was very scary. But on it, the big thing that really got everyone's attention and ended up on Fox News and a bunch of other news sites was that she dropped from the Democratic Party and has retired as a congressman, I think. And she had ran in the 2020 presidential election for the Democratic side and sadly lost. In all reality now, man, I wish she would have won. Because listening to her speak and her takes on a lot of stuff, I was like, oh, why isn't she president? I was like, how did you guys not get her up here? Like, holy shit. I mean, I could see some disgruntlements come from some people on the left, but at one point I'm like, because it's not as left as they would want her to be. And that's one reason why she left the Democratic Party, was because she saw the, not corruption, but the stringencies on like trying to appeal to the other liberal people, and I would say teenagers and 20-year-olds. But it was a really good podcast, a lot of different topics. But yeah, she decided she didn't want to be a part of the Democratic Party anymore, and she's gonna run, she's gonna be a dependent. I don't know if she's gonna run. It was kind of depressing because Joe asked if she was gonna run in the 2024 election, and basically her words were, at this point, we don't know if there's gonna be a 2024 election, so I'm not necessarily saying I'm going to run or not. Because she was talking, one of the big topics for the podcast episode was on Russia and Ukraine, and they were discussing a lot of stuff with the military industrial complex, Putin, the whole war itself, the stuff dealing with Crimea, logistical changes, nuclear aspects of things. And she basically said, she's like, at this point, there's no necessary guarantee of what's going to happen in the next 2 years. So I can't necessarily tell you yes or no on if I'm going to run, because stuff's so volatile. And it really was like, oh shit. And along that line was one thing that they talked about was last week, it had been leaked that Biden had said that this is the closest we've ever been to nuclear war since that we're actually closer than the Cuban Missile Crisis. But sadly, he didn't say this publicly. He said it in a donors meeting for the Democrats, and it just happened to get leaked. But nothing like this has actually been talked about on like mainstream media, and it's kind of like, oh God, like when you really think about it, they're not wrong, and it is pretty scary. Like, I try not to think about it. Like, I'm not gonna try to ruin my day to day by like existential like angst, but at the same time, all right, real quick, if you haven't already, please like, subscribe, share with your friends, subscribe to the channel. It's much appreciated. Make sure to hit that bell icon so you're reminded when new posts are out, and I will see you guys all later. Fuck, we really don't know. And it's the war in Ukraine is ridiculous. And one of the things that they talked about was how, like, the only way this is really going to end is if there's going to have to be some sort of de-escalation and diplomatic compromise. But at this point, either side isn't doing it. The U.S. is not trying to use our foothold to try helping that process come about, and certain people are just trying to keep pushing weapons and war. And in all reality, that's just going to push us closer to World War III. And we probably should be pushing for a diplomatic outcome, and the people higher up are not at this point. So it wasn't a very uplifting podcast by any means, but it was very truthful, like straightforward, and it was very interesting to hear someone that's been that involved in politics really break a lot of this stuff down. And I'm really like, man, why don't we have her? Like, she's from Hawaii, so she's is it Sumerian? That's not the right words. Samoan, sorry. Samoan, I think. She's Hindu, so she was the first Hindu representative, sorry. Not Congress, but oh shit. Yeah, and she's female. She was in the military. She served, I think, in the army is what she said. Don't quote me on that one. But it's like, man, if there's anyone that we should have that should be president at one point, I think it's her. It's like, man, she has the diversity aspect that people want. She's a female. She's a woman. She's not even Christian, which I feel like that might piss some people off, but I don't think that should necessarily matter when it comes to who runs as president. And she's also served. It's like, man, when was the last time we had a president that had served in the armed forces? And that would be a very good aspect, especially considering what's going on right now. It was an amazing interview. I do recommend anyone to go listen to that episode and just kind of get a feel for, I guess, like the political climate and just stuff going on. Like, they talked on a lot of mainstream stuff when it came to transgender stuff and rights and a bunch of other topics and issues. So it was very interesting, to say the least. I actually really enjoyed it. It was really cool to see the insides of politics a little bit from someone that's in it. So it was very cool that he was able to have someone like her that's so open to talk about certain things. But considering the news and everything, I also recommend you guys to go check out Breaking Points. It's basically the main news source I use. I don't really try to pay attention to any mainstream news. I don't watch CNN, Fox, MSNBC. All of it's so polarized, pushing their own agendas, like anything along those lines. I listen to Breaking Points. One of the two people that basically run it have both been in politics and in the system for stuff like this for years. They bring both perspectives. One's a Republican, one's a Democrat. They bring both sides of the stories and all this stuff, and they break stuff down on a non-biased opinion and just bring in the information. They do have a podcast, but I think they also have a YouTube channel and post stuff. I try to listen to them at least once a week, but I just wanted to throw that out there, and that was some of the stuff where I kind of learned more about the stuff with the Ukrainian war and how I kind of keep up on it to try getting a non-biased opinion on stuff. So if you guys are interested, definitely go check them out.